On October 21, 336 BC, a Macedonian royal wedding celebration was underway in Aege. Inside the resplendent palace, nobles toasted and danced in the festivities. Yet amidst the jubilation, a dagger quietly approached Philip II's chest. This moment changed the fate of the entire ancient world. A 20-year-old was about to embark on a journey to conquer 3 continents, a journey that began with his father's bloody corpse.
Back in 340 BC, 16-year-old Alexander was appointed regent by his father, Philip II, of Pella, the Macedonian capital. This wasn't just an honorary title. It was a true test of power. While his father was away on military campaigns, the young prince had to navigate the political challenges of his homeland.
The rebellion of the Thracian tribes soon gave the young regent an opportunity to demonstrate his abilities. The Thracians had long been a threat to Macedonia's northern border. They were brave warriors and experienced in mountain warfare. When they learned that Philip II was away from the country, they immediately launched a large-scale invasion.
Alexander's response was unexpectedly swift and decisive. Rather than wait for reinforcements, he immediately mustered available troops and personally led a force of elite Macedonian cavalry north to meet the enemy. This military campaign showcased the speed, daring, and tactical genius that would later define his world conquest.
In the battle against the Thracians, Alexander not only demonstrated his personal bravery, but more importantly, his outstanding military command ability. He adopted flexible tactics, taking advantage of the mobility of the Macedonian cavalry, setting an ambush at the junction of the mountains and plains, and defeated the Thracian coalition in one fell swoop. Even more impressive is Alexander's handling of the situation after the war. Rather than simply expelling his enemies, he built a new city on Thracian soil and named it Alexandropolis. This was the first city in history to be named after Alexander, foreshadowing his future glorious journey that would leave his name throughout the known world. This victory not only consolidated Macedonia's northern border defenses, but more importantly, it announced to the entire Greek world that Philip II had a truly qualified successor. Alexander, only 16 years old, had already shown the potential to become a great monarch. The 16-year-old Alexander demonstrated his extraordinary military talent in his first independent battle command. But the real test was yet to come, as the entire Greek world was brewing a decisive war. In 338 BC, one of the most pivotal battles in Greek history was about to erupt. The alliance of Greek city-states, led by Athens and Thebes, decided to mount a final resistance to Macedonian hegemony. The two sides faced off on the Chaeronea plain, a site that would mark the end of the classical Greek era. Philip II, fully aware of the importance of this battle, appointed the 18-year-old Alexander commander of the left-wing cavalry. This was a tremendous vote of confidence in his son's abilities, but also a severe test. Among the enemies he faced was the Sacred Legion of Thebes, Greece's most elite force, a force of 300 pairs of male lovers, undefeated on the battlefield. When the battle began, Philip II employed a clever tactic. He ordered the Macedonian phalanx on the right wing to deliberately retreat, luring the Athenians into pursuit, and thus stretching the Greek coalition's line. At this critical moment, Alexander's cavalry on the left wing launched a decisive charge. The young Alexander displayed remarkable tactical insight and personal courage. He precisely seized the moment when a gap appeared in the enemy line and led his cavalry straight in, slicing through the Greek coalition's defenses like a sword. During this charge, he personally killed several enemy generals, including a high-ranking Theban commander.
The most stunning moment was Alexander's final blow to the Holy Legion. When this legendary, invincible force was scattered by cavalry, Alexander chose not to pursue the fleeing troops, but to confront those warriors who remained fighting. The Holy Legion fought to the bitter end, and all 300 of them died in battle, with not a single one falling with their backs to the enemy. According to historical records, when Philip II inspected the battlefield after the battle and saw the bodies of the Holy Legion soldiers, he shed tears. The iron-blooded monarch addressed these brave enemies, saying, "Let no one doubt that these men have done or suffered any shameful deeds." He ordered the construction of a monument to these warriors, which still stands in Chaeronea today. The victory at Chaeronea marked the establishment of Macedonian hegemony and the end of the classical era in Greece. More importantly, it showcased Alexander's extraordinary military talent to the world. At the age of 18, he had already proven himself worthy of being Philip II's successor. The Battle of Chaeronea brought Alexander fame, but as his power grew, the relationship between father and son became complicated. Political intrigue and personal ambition were brewing within the royal family. After the war, the Macedonian kingdom reached unprecedented power. Philip II established the League of Corinth, and almost all Greek city-states recognized Macedonia's hegemony. However, beneath this superficial splendor, undercurrents surged within the royal family. Philip II's policy of polygamy began to have unintended consequences. As a statesman, he understood the importance of marriage alliances. Each marriage represented a political alliance with a tribe or kingdom. However, his marriage to Cleopatra Eurydice, a young Macedonian noblewoman, triggered a crisis within the royal family. This marriage greatly threatened Alexander's mother, Olympias. Olympias was a strong woman herself, from the royal family of Epirus, with a fierce personality and tough tactics. She was worried that the new queen would give birth to a male heir, thus threatening Alexander's right to the throne. Tensions reached a peak at a royal banquet when Cleopatra's uncle Attalus, amidst the fervor of wine, publicly prayed that the new queen would bear a true heir to Macedonia. This remark clearly implied that Alexander was not a full-blooded Macedonian, as his mother was from Epirus. Furious, Alexander immediately stood up, threw his cup at Attalus, and roared, "You villain! What do you take me for, a bastard?" Philip II, enraged, drew his sword against his son, but drunken, he fell to the ground. Alexander sneered. "Look, he who is about to march from Europe into Asia can't even walk from one table to another." The consequences of this conflict were severe. Alexander and his mother, Olympias, were forced to leave Macedonia and go into exile in Epirus. For a young prince accustomed to power and glory, this humiliation was unbearable. However, this exile also matured Alexander, giving him a deeper understanding of the complexities of politics and the brutality of power struggles. Alexander wasted no time during his months in Epirus. He cultivated closer ties with his mother's family and pondered his own future. He knew that no matter how strained their relationship might be,
He remained the most likely heir to the Macedonian throne. Fortunately, this tension did not last long. Thanks to the mediation of his friends, particularly the Corinthian Demaratus, Philip II finally agreed to allow his son to return. Father and son reconciled, but both knew that their relationship had changed forever.
The conflicts within the royal family were temporarily eased, but the seeds of hatred that had been planted were secretly sprouting. No one could have predicted that these court struggles would eventually end in the most bloody way. In the summer of 336 BC, Philip II decided to hold a grand wedding for his daughter, Cleopatra. The bride would marry Alexander I, king of Epirus, his uncle. The wedding was not only a union of two royal families, but also a prime opportunity for Philip II to demonstrate Macedonian power and influence.
Yet beneath this veneer of joy, the shadow of death loomed. Pausanias, Philip II's personal guard, burned with a rage for revenge. Once one of the king's most trusted men, he felt deeply humiliated during a court dispute, and Philip II had failed to uphold justice for him.
On the wedding day, the theater at Aege was packed with distinguished guests from across the Greek world. Philip II decided to make his entrance in the most dignified manner possible. He would enter the theater alone, without any escort, to demonstrate his absolute authority and confidence as the leader of the Greeks. When Philip II, dressed in a pure white robe and a golden crown, slowly walked towards the center of the theater, the entire venue fell into silence. This great monarch who conquered Greece and was about to conquer Persia displayed unparalleled majesty at the peak of his life. At that moment, Pausanias burst from the crowd, his dagger gleaming coldly in the sunlight. Before anyone could react, the sharp blade had already pierced Philip II's chest. The Lion of Macedonia, the conqueror of Greece, fell in a pool of blood.
Pausanias attempted to escape, but was quickly killed by the pursuing guards. However, the true mastermind behind the assassination remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Some say it was revenge orchestrated by Olympius, others a Persian conspiracy, and still others believe it was purely the result of personal vendettas.
Whatever the truth, Philip II's death radically changed the course of history. The 20-year-old Alexander suddenly faced an unprecedented crisis. Some in Macedonia questioned the legitimacy of his succession to the throne. The Greek city-states were vying to regain their independence, and the barbarian tribes to the north sensed the dangers of civil unrest in Macedonia. At this critical moment, Alexander displayed political wisdom beyond his years. He immediately summoned the Macedonian army and the aristocracy, proclaiming himself the legitimate successor to Philip II. More importantly, he pledged to continue his father's policies and complete his grand plan to conquer Persia. Although his father's death was a huge blow, it also became a turning point in Alexander's life. From that moment on, he was no longer a prince, but a true king. But the challenges before him had just begun. Alexander's coronation ceremony took place amidst a climate of sorrow and tension. The 20-year-old new king knew full well that he inherited not only the crown and power, but also countless enemies and immense responsibility. The future of Macedonia, the fate of Greece, and even the entire known world would depend on his next decision. When the news reached Athens, the famous orator Demosthenes excitedly declared at the People's Assembly, "This little boy is nothing to worry about. The Macedonian threat is over." However, the orator would soon discover that he had made a fatal mistake.
Young Alexander stood atop the tower of the Pella palace, gazing at the distant mountains. His eyes gleamed with the ambition and determination his father had once possessed, but even more so with something uniquely his own, an unprecedented thirst for conquest, a grand dream to carve his name across 3 continents. The path to kingship had begun, and this was only the beginning of a legendary legacy.
In the next episode, we'll witness how Alexander, in just 2 years, quelled the Greek rebellion, conquered the Balkan Peninsula, and embarked on the Eastern expedition that changed world history. This 20-year-old young king would forge an immortal legend with blood and fire.